Good evening. Good evening. Awesome. Those of you who are willing and able, please stand for the singing of the Black National Anthem. Lift every voice and sing. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading the path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far all the way, Thou who hast by Thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met Thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget Thee. Shadow beneath Thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land.
Thank you so much, Felicia Moore and Dexter Chris. Really a beautiful opening to our evening. My name is Amir Ahmed. My English pronouns are he, his, and him, and I serve as Vice Provost for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion here at University of Vermont, which is a Senior Diversity Officer role. It is my honor to welcome you to our Martin Luther King keynote. We are gathered today in troubling and challenging times, and so we are here to honor Dr. King's legacy while also thinking about how we navigate these challenging times. Before we explore and discuss with our keynote today, I want to share with you the university's land acknowledgement. The campus of University of Vermont sits within a place of gathering and exchange, shaped by water and stewarded by ongoing generations of indigenous people, in particular the Western Abenaki. Acknowledging the relations between water, land, and people is in harmony with the mission of the university, acknowledging the serious and significant impacts of our histories on indigenous people and their homelands is part of the university's ongoing work of teaching, research, and engagement, and an essential reminder of our past and our interconnected futures for many of us gathered here on this land. UVM respects the indigenous knowledge interwoven into this place and commits to uplifting the indigenous people and cultures present on this land and within our community. And that interconnected future is something that I think is going to be poignant for us to reflect on in these troubling and challenging times. We are coming together at a moment in which there are profound threats to our ability to advance the work of diversity, equity, inclusion, and inclusive excellence. The university has been engaged in a comprehensive inclusive excellence action planning process over the last couple years, and we developed a plan because of our commitment to our values, rooted in what's referred to as our common ground: respect, integrity, innovation, openness, justice, and responsibility. And those values only have meaning when we seek to live further into them and we face the challenges and the threats of our time. We are witnessing conflict, we are witnessing dualism, we are witnessing high-level leadership framing individuals as us versus them, good versus evil, and dualism is deeply in conflict with our commitment to live into our theme today, beloved community. We cannot live into beloved community when we are rooted in war and conflict and hate. So we must pursue love, we must pursue a commitment to justice, and we will spend our time today really thinking about the next steps of how we navigate these challenging times. And to help us do so, our president, Suresh Garamella, will join us to share his thoughts about the importance of this day today. I also want to say one thing before he does, is that 3 weeks ago today, we had a scheduled speaker, Nelson Johnson, who is a survivor of the Greensboro Massacre and unfortunately had some health challenges. And so I want to thank Dr. Damon A. Williams for stepping in on such short notice. The day before that was the resignation of Claudine Gay at Harvard. And so as an expert in higher education and diversity, equity, inclusion, I am incredibly grateful that he's bringing his knowledge and wisdom and voice when we are facing an existential challenge to academic freedom, to inclusion and equity in higher education. Our president, Suresh Garamella, has been president since 2019. During his time as president, UVM has established itself as a leading public flagship university that prioritizes student success and enables research excellence. A professor of mechanical engineering, Dr. Garamella is a dedicated educator and mentor for students and one of the country's most highly cited researchers. President Garamella, your remarks.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, and welcome everyone to this 2024 Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration and our keynote lecture. I love this day. I look forward to the Martin Luther King lecture every time. It's allowed me to meet wonderful people like Harry Belafonte and Bernice Reagan Johnson, Sweet Honey in the Rock, folks like that. And today, we have Damon Williams. And so these are amazing speakers. It's a great opportunity for us to hear from folks who have thought a lot about the issues at hand. So I'm glad to see that those of you who are here and joining us remotely are able to benefit from the wisdom of folks like Damon. So I also want to recognize the guests that we have here that we've had before, Felixia Moore and Dexter Chris. I remember hearing you in my first year here when Wanda Head and Grant had hosted this event, and you've lost nothing. You're doing a wonderful job, and I look forward to your closing song as well. I also thank all of you, the audience, both present here and virtual. So thank you all for being here today. My thanks to Vice Provost Amir Ahmed, and certainly his merry band in the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. They work hard to bring us all together, keep us honest, and put on great shows. And this signature annual event is very important to me, and they do a wonderful job, so thank you all. The lessons that Dr. King had to teach us feel limitless. And now, more than half a century after his death, we know they're timeless. Today's talk will focus on Dr. King's vision, as you heard, of creating a beloved community. This notion is about inclusion. It's about commitment to one another. It's about each and every person taking responsibility for creating a community that prioritizes peace. As one of my heroes, Congressman John Lewis, defines it, the beloved community, he said it means a nation and world society at peace with itself. John Lewis and Martin Luther King envisioned a beloved community that was not only national, but global in its reach. A global community that left no one out and therefore created peace. We, as a part of that global community, as part of this wonderful local community here in Vermont and at the University of Vermont, still have work to do. And I know we're working hard, and that many are devoted to working for the betterment of this community. Our comprehensive Inclusive Excellence Action Plan draws a coordinated path for enriching our community and sets goals across the university that both builds our collective vision and meets the distinctive needs of each academic and administrative unit. Importantly, as my friend Damon Williams insightfully outlined for us near the beginning of our planning process when he visited us 2 years ago, the inclusive and distinctive approach we took as a campus means that all of us, president, provost, student, staff, faculty, each of us will do our part, and each of us can bring our distinctive, diverse strengths to the beloved community we're building at the University of Vermont. I look forward to hearing what Dr. Williams has to say and share with us today. On behalf of Provost Patty Prelock and all of the senior leadership here as well, thank you again, and thank you for joining us, and welcome to this lovely event. Thanks.
To introduce our speaker, who is, those of you who were here 2 years ago, a very good friend of mine, who's from my hometown, and we have a lot of shared interconnections, and he is a primary mentor of mine. The person that from our team in the Division of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion that will introduce him is Ali Mahmoud, who is a coordinator of leadership development at the Interfaith Center. Ali has joined us in 2022 after working at Allegheny College. He holds a master's in Islamic and leadership from Claremont College of Theology in California. Born in India, having lived in several countries, Ali moved from the United States for his acting studies. He shifted from acting to academia, focusing on the intersection of faith and environmental activism, where he is now a PhD student here at UVM in Rubenstein School of Sustainability. His work explores how stories from different faiths can inspire care for the environment. Ali.
Good morning. Good evening. Like all bad actors, I also need a script. So let me start. Thank you for that warm welcome. Again, as we're gathered here to celebrate MLK Day, Martin Luther King, and reflect on the theme of creating beloved community, it's my profound honor to introduce a luminary in the field of diversity, inclusion, Dr. Damon A. William. Dr. William is not only a distinct scholar and educator, but also a renowned expert in strategic diversity leadership, youth development, cooperative responsibility, and organizational change. His work spans over 1,000 institutions, including colleges and universities, Fortune 100 companies and government agencies, always committed towards excellence in fostering diversity, equitability, and inclusive community. Dr. William earned his doctors from University of Michigan Center for Studies of Higher Education and postdoctoral education, where his focus was on the area of organizational behavior and management. He received both his master's in education in leadership and his bachelor's in sociology from Miami University. He has been a beacon of inspiration and transformation, creating programs that have significantly advanced the cause of diversity, equity, multiculturalism, and inclusion. His efforts has catalyzed change in liberal education, STEM completion, campus climates, faculty diversity, and curriculum reforms, profoundly impacting lives and institutions across the globe. He has also formerly served as Assistant Vice Provost of Multicultural and International Affairs at the University of Connecticut, where he produced key leadership in the development of STEM education. Now, talking about the concept of creating a beloved community is aligned with Dr. Williams' mission. His very idea of creating a beloved community is deeply rooted in also various faith tradition and philosophical tradition, including my own as a Muslim that resonates in the Islamic principle of the word ummah, which is a global community bounded by shared beliefs where peace, justice, and equity prevails. In the spirit of a community, ummah, we are reminded that our collective efforts in fostering understanding, compassion, and unity are essential in building a beloved community, as envisioned by Martin Luther King Jr. himself. As growing up, I saw MLK from far away from India, and for me there were two heroes who I can always think about in the United States. One is Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and both of their work impacted us very deeply throughout our lives. And Martin Luther King Day is important for all of us because it is a time where communities of all type can come together to put our religious or philosophical beliefs into action. The philosophical traditions may differ, but the work unifies us as one, a whole community, working to make lives better to those around us. This is the definition of the Jewish value, takamhulam, repairing the world. So I ask you, before I invite Martin, Dr. William to be in a short prayer with me, I invite you to be part of this prayer from whatever faith tradition or philosophical tradition that you come from. Just take a minute of silence as I share the prayer with you. A source of life and love, we pray for peace in our world. We seek peace in our hearts, a peace that transcends all understanding, that heals all wounds, that reconciles all conflict and grants us the wisdom to seek peace, to pursue dialogues, to embrace diversity, to respect dignity, and to uphold justice. May we be blessed with peace, a peace that is a gift, a responsibility that is a promise and a challenge, and that is a hope and a reality. Now, bring as much warmth you can in your hands, and I would like to invite Dr. Damon A. Williams to the stage.
What a warm University of Vermont welcome. Thank you so much for allowing me to be with you today. This beloved community, thank you so much. That prayer was absolutely everything. Thank you so much for that prayer, friend. The last time I was here was 2 years ago, nearly to the day. And it was a much different time period for the university. We were all on the tail end of COVID. And there's a little funny story that I think about when I came up here to the stage the last time. And I was following a similar assemblage of wonderful University of Vermont leaders, and the president came up to the podium, he had his mask on. Dr. Amir Ahmed came up to the podium and he had his mask on. And they maintained their mask in their commentaries, which were fairly brief. And I knew that the great state of Vermont had some pretty strong safety protocols in place for the state to ensure the health and community to be preserved, even those who had vulnerabilities and challenges. And so when I saw them come up, my whole guidance that I had been given that I could take my mask off, it went out the roof. So I came up and gave the entirety of my remarks with my mask on. And the mask kept sliding down. And it kept sliding down. And I kept pulling it back up and pulling it back up because I would not be deterred because I was so thankful to be here. The thing I will say today is I'm glad to be here and I'm glad I don't have that mask on today. We come here today with this incredible opportunity to talk about this theme, which has been set up, which I believe is so incredibly important. This theme which talks about this idea of a beloved community. Ideas, concepts, visions connected to the history, the legacy, the reality, the testimony of Dr. King. Dr. King, a dreamer and a change agent, an activist and a strategist, a clergyman and a warrior, a poet and a scholar, a man with deep convictions, but yet we don't freeze individuals, also a man with human frailties, an imperfect man, an imperfect human being, just like each and every one of us, an orator and a negotiator, a visionary and a pragmatist, a fighter for people and a lover of community, a race man, but a coalition builder. Deemed too aggressive by some and too passive by others, a husband and a father. A husband and a father who recently saw his son go to his maker. I ask you to please join with me for a moment of silence for his son, his youngest child, Mr. Dexter King, who passed away just recently. Dr. King's work I believe, is not just a chance to look back, but it's a chance for us to look forward. A chance to us to go, as he'd like to say, to the proverbial mountaintop. To engage in what I refer to as summiting. Summiting. Not just looking back on history and remembrance of what was, but summoning as we come together in this beloved community to think about, to consider, to find a pathway to what is and what could be as we manifest this community. When I talk about summoning, I talk about determining where are we as we celebrate this King holiday. How do we take stock of what we have? How do we reflect on our journey? How do we renew and revigorate for what is to come? How do we plan and we course correct? How do we summit in this moment, those of you who join with me in this beautiful, pristine chapel, and those of you who join with me virtually? Because I believe that each and every one of us is on a journey. We are on a journey, we are on a climb for diversity, a climb for equity, a climb for inclusion, a climb for belonging, a climb for justice, a climb for a business case for diversity, a climb for health equity, a climb for cultural competence and change, a climb for new outcomes, a climb for possibility, a climb for hope, a climb for a beloved community. When I think and I reflect on the words of Dr. King, when I think and I reflect on all that he meant to the world and all that he continually means today, with words and vision that were profound, timeless, and limitless as our president gave us to begin, I understand that life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are we doing for others? Because I can't believe that Dr. King would go to a summit and be looking back saying that the work was done. I can't believe that he would go to a summit and be sitting there and only reflecting upon what was. He would be thinking about and manifesting what could be. He'd be understanding that greatness is not what we do for self, but greatness is how we do good for others. He will be asking the self, how are we allies to the vision of a beloved community? He'd be asking that of himself, just as I beseech each and every one of you within the sound of my voice to ask yourself, how are you allies to the vision of beloved community today in 2024? Allies like John D. Lewis, allies like Cesar Chavez, allies like Angela Davis, allies like Yuri Kochiyama, allies like the departed who gave his life, Andrew Goodman, allies like Winona LaDuke, allies like the departed legendary scholar Bell Hooks, allies like the notorious RBG Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Allies like you and allies like me who have the possibility to stand up and stand within the breach of othering, the possibility to stand up and manifest beloved community. When I think about this idea of beloved community, I think about this notion of a heart. And that heart breathes. And that heart pumps. And that heart moves. And yes, indeed, my slide is breathing and pumping. Because we can't manifest beloved community without coming together. We can't manifest and create beloved community without leadership. Leadership that envisions a possibility of equity. Leadership that envisions a possibility of hope. Leadership that is courageous. We find ourselves right now, excuse me, I need a drink of water. Excuse me 1 second. We find ourselves in a time right now, friends, where we need courageous leadership to bring about a beloved community. We need a commitment to fostering not just diversity, not just inclusion, but a commitment to fostering a sense of belonging. A commitment to respectful dialogue.
One of the things that I see over and over again is that we're losing our ability to dialogue, friends. Thank you so much. Look at that. President just got me covered. Thank you so much. I needed that. Little menthol to soothe the throat. A commitment to beloved community. A community that I believe is oftentimes being eroded by a cancel culture that is eliminating the possibilities of respectful dialogue. Coming together and engaging in conversation even in the face of oppositional viewpoints. Let me say that again. Coming together in conversation even in the face of oppositional viewpoints. The importance of us embracing our idea of forgiveness and reconciliation. Not just canceling someone because they didn't have the perfect word when they tried to do the perfect thing. Not just eliminating individuals' possibilities to grow and to evolve and to become because they don't have all of the perfect language of anti-racism and the perfect language of anti-privilege because they're trying to grapple with these ideas on their journey with humility, forgiveness, and reconciliation. The importance of us living and cultivating and breathing into a beloved community, this idea of empathy. Because empathy is oftentimes the rate-limiting factor of whether community ever manifests itself. When there is no empathy, there is no community because we're not thinking about our others, not thinking about our fellow human, not championing this idea of justice and equity. Not just in our day-to-day lives, but championing these things at a meta level, at a state level, at a community level, at a national level, even at a global level. An orientation of serving others. So foundational as we live our lives multidimensionally as allies. I asked individuals who are in positions of leadership, authority, and influence oftentimes, who are you sponsoring to greater opportunity? Who are you mentoring in their journey? Who are you coaching and helping? Do those individuals look like you, or do those individuals live in the world with different identities than you? Are they different in terms of race, ethnicity? Are they different in terms of gender identity? Are they different in terms of sexual orientation? Are they different in terms of their visible manifestation of a religious identity than yourself? Or are you purely only coaching, mentoring, and sponsoring, living your life as an ally to those who look like you? Are you standing up in spaces and upstanding and saying what needs to be said as it needs to be said? Are you moving quietly? Because oftentimes, allyship is not the loudest, squeakiest voice in the room. Allyship is the person that quietly comes to you after a difficult moment and invites you to be their confidant. They want to be there and hold space with you quietly. They're the individual who sits in their role as department chair, not carrying or waving a flag of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but they're the person that in that role of department chair is quietly making sure that these issues are on the agenda of teaching and learning. These issues are on the agenda of activating the Inclusive Excellence Plan, but doing it not just because it's in a plan, but doing it because it's a part of their vision of manifesting beloved community. It's engaging in a continuous, lifelong process of education and awareness building. It's understanding that even as I stand here before you today, heterosexual, even as I stand here before you today, very educated, even as I stand here before you today, a black man having dealt with all the depravity and the challenges that we can deal with as African-American males, I stand here today with humility, knowing that I have far ways to go to understand even more Islamophobia, even more anti-Semitism, even more ideas of gender identity. My pronouns are he, him, his. I wasn't comfortable saying that a couple years ago. And I stand here today with you as a beacon and a person who is honored to carry the mantle of being a part of championing inclusive excellence and manifesting beloved community. How do we come together and celebrate the achievements of those individuals who are doing this work every day, who oftentimes toil in quiet and in silence, but don't have the opportunity to be honored and recognized for what they're doing with students, for what they're doing in the Burlington community, for what they're doing globally, for what they're doing shepherding students preciously through dissertation and thesis projects, oftentimes being the only person in the department who maybe is shepherding the persons of color or those individuals who are, quote, members of marginalized communities. How are we honoring and recognizing their struggle How are we honoring and recognizing those deans, those leaders who say, I won't just activate the plan, I want to push the plan to its limits because I believe in the possibilities of manifesting a beloved community. I believe we are at this crucible time, friends, where we have to be asking ourselves, not just how do we manifest beloved community, but where do we go from here, chaos or community? Because LGBTQ hate is on the rise. Because Asian American Pacific Islander hate is on the rise. Because Islamophobia hate is on the rise. Because anti-Semitic hate is on the rise. Because cancel culture is on the rise. And I think about Dr. King's words, we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied together in a single garment of destiny, and that whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. And in this moment that we find ourselves in this great nation, the United States of America, never before have I felt we are more at a time and a place that there are two Americas, becoming more divisive, more divided, more antithetical to the notion of beloved community, standing in the way of Dr. King's continuing work and legacy here today. And as I stand here before you, only a couple months before we will have again, as a part of our democracy, a national conversation in a presidential election for which way and which direction will we go? Will we go towards chaos? Will we go towards community? Will we go towards love or will we go towards hate? Will we go towards possibility or will we go towards something that is far more damning? Where will we stand? And I'm not talking about stumping for an R and a D because both sides of a buzzard's wings got some crookedness to it. What I'm talking about is a deeper call to action, a bigger call to possibility, a bigger notion of a beloved community. It seems like just yesterday, when we were here, and all the noise had been sucked out of the system. When the pandemic had hit, we were not moving in the way that we normally did. We weren't coming to campus to teach our classes. We weren't going to our offices, no matter what those offices or space of work were, unless you were one of those precious individuals who oftentimes were the silent heroes, sheroes, and individuals who were called those critical, essential workers. Those individuals invisibly who got up to go to work each and every day, oftentimes to do the important work that goes under-acknowledged, underappreciated, and under-recognized. It was a time of quiet. It was a time of silence. And it was in that moment of silence that something happened in our nation that was catalyzing. And for the first time, there were many individuals who could see Mr. George Floyd. They could see Mr. Ahmaud Arbery. They could see Miss Breonna Taylor. They could see Mr. Eric Garner. They could see Mr. Michael Brown. They could see Mr. Laquan McDonald, Mr. Tamir Rice, Mr. Trayvon Martin, Mr. Walter Scott, Mr. Freddie Gray, Miss Sandra Bland, Mr. Alton Sterling, Miss Corinne Gaines, Miss Deborah Danner, Mr. Philando Castile. Dare I say, they could see not only Mr. Amadou Diallo, they could see the historic body of Mr. Emmett Till played out in front of them. And as I was just talking with a member of your community right before I came here, there was a national conversation on racism in our country. And people were asking, are we at the beginning of a renewal of Dr. King's work? A new lease on that work? A new progressive movement that would manifest and go forward, as it was estimated by Pew that roughly 70% of Americans had serious conversations on race and racism. And at the time, we were doing climate studies on college and university campuses, and we were finding that those numbers on campus were approaching 90+%. This conversation. And some were saying we are at this moment of a racial reckoning in our country, where we're not only going to talk about issues of diversity, we're not only going to talk about issues of equity, we're not only going to talk about issues of inclusion, but we're going to talk about issues of justice. We're going to talk about this notion of Jedi. we're going to manifest this conversation at a higher gear. A gear that requires us to understand individual acts of deplorability and hate, that causes us to understand subtle, often invisible acts of microaggression and othering, that necessitates a need for us to understand interlocking gears of structural inequality and racism. Shout out to Professor Patricia Rose, who talks about these ideas of the interlocking gears of structural inequality and racism. Embedded in criminal justice, embedded in education, embedded in housing, embedded in media, embedded in wealth, stratified in the same way consistently, every single data point saying that the work of Dr. King is far from done. But when we have this conversation of interlocking gears of structural inequality, of systemic dynamics of discrimination, overarchingly in this notion of anti-racism, it means having an engagement of a history that goes back, stretches back to Native American experiences, that stretches through the 246 years of the chattel slave era in this country, that takes us to a conversation of segregation and roughly 90 years of segregation, and only 16 years roughly of a civil rights movement, and only 50 years roughly of a movement for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Look at that timeline. Where has our country spent the majority of its time grappling with these issues? And so in that moment of 2021, when George Floyd lost his precious life, we saw this historic catalyzing of new DEI and anti-racism actions, as everyone was running out saying we need DEI officers in all areas of organizational life. The Republican Party had a DEI officer at the time. Everybody had a DEI officer. Progressive organizations, conservative organizations, every organization. We saw also, too, new plans using the language, quote, anti-racist organization. If you go back and study what plans look like pre-2021, plans after 2021, you will find there is no mention of anti-racism in nearly any plan before that. And I've done the research. And so it catalyzed an elevation of a new perspective that was an old perspective. Everybody doing DEI training on unconscious bias. Somebody asked me, Dr. Williams, what's different than what the work looked like a couple years ago? I said, no one was talking about unconscious bias. They said, what's the same now? I said, unconscious bias and all the other types of biases that exist in the world. We also saw a proliferation of billions of dollars of community investment, in particular into Black community development. And I tell you, if you needed to get some paper products for Juneteenth or Kwanzaa, all those products were readily available for you because Black products just flooded the market. Flooded the market, friends. But one of the things that is important for us to understand as we come to this moment today to talk about and consider the beloved community is that when we're talking about this idea of an anti-racist change management approach, it is not the same as a DEI change management approach. There are parts of both that share intersectionality and overlap, particularly as it relates to accomplishing racial equity and outcomes. Both paradigms want to see an elimination of racial inequity. However, when we go deeper into talking about what it means to, quote, be anti-racist in our leadership organizational manifestation from a change management perspective, we're talking about historical remembrance and truth-telling. We're talking about reconciling the pain of all of those years. We're talking about taking action to heal those past things and then moving forward. Anybody in the room like French toast? Anybody like French toast? Can I see the hands if y'all like French toast? Now, everybody in the room like French toast. Come on now. With the raisin bread, everybody like French toast. When you make your French toast, you mix your batter up. You whip it up real good. You get your bread, and you take your bread, and you do what's referred to as dredge it in the batter. You got to stick it in there and dredge it in the batter. Both sides. And then you put it on the grill and you cook it up. So that's what anti-racism change methodology is. You got to dredge yourself into pain. You got to dredge yourself in the ugliness and the hurt. You got to dredge yourself in all of those challenges. And quite candidly, from a developmental perspective, that is such a high bar. When most people can't even have a conversation about racial difference. And yet, because it was a historic moment when the noise was gone and people could see something with more clarity than ever before, there was a manifestation of this in terms of words. But people didn't understand what it meant in terms of leadership and change management and activation. And so as a result, for every action, there's a reaction. And the reaction that we're seeing now is there's a pushback and an energy moving back against that highlighting of that particular approach to DEI, the anti-racism, that is now taking aim, not just at anti-racism, it's taking aim at all of diversity, equity, and inclusion work. Whether it's the work that is in this anti-racism camp, it's the work that's in the inclusive excellence camp, it's the work that's in any camp, it's all coming under the ire of an attack now. I was a huge, huge fan of the television show, The Game of Thrones. Not this trash that they put out in the most recent series, but the original show. And in that original show, one of the things that they talked about was that there was a time into the future, and this was the central theme of this 7-season-long show on HBO, of a time in which there will be a great conflict into the future, where individuals on this side and that side would have to choose sides, and they'd have to engage. And they talked about it in the overarching metaphor that this time in the future was when winter came. When winter came was when the resistance to diversity, the resistance to equity, the resistance to inclusion, the resistance to a beloved community would be here. Friends, I'm here to tell you, winter is not coming, winter is here. We find ourselves in a moment now as new Supreme Court rulings continue forward with the multi-generational strategic focus on dialing back Dr. King's legacy and the legacies that protected other issues of identity in terms of women and their ability to govern, control, make decisions regarding their body. And hear me when I say this, we are at the moment of a new conservative era that will continue to erode Supreme Court rulings that had set up foundations to support inclusive excellence now and into the future. Also, too, historic levels of anti-DEI legislation introduced at the state level, and an anti-woke cultural energy that we see playing itself out in the media and playing itself out on the ground in communities. Right now at Johns Hopkins University, there is a bus with pictures of their precious DEI officer on the side of it claiming this individual is a racist. Driving around campus, this individual being trolled by multi-billionaire individuals, part of a coordinated effort that has air game and ground game that is incredibly strategic. And in this moment, my team has been reflective. We've been doing our research. We've been doing our outreach. We've been doing our trainings, doing our lectures, putting various different possibilities in the world. And one of the things we did is we wanted to define this idea of the anti-DEI movement. A structured and highly coordinated political and media effort to change laws and policies to dramatically impact the diversity, equity, and inclusion freedoms, definitions, programs, funding, strategies, and approaches that benefit women, LGBTQ, racial and ethnic, and other diverse communities and their allies. There's something that's really important here for you to understand. Structured and coordinated effort. Nothing we are seeing is by happenstance. Whether we're talking about the Supreme Court cases, we're talking about the new laws in Florida, the new laws in Texas, the new legislation just introduced in Kentucky, the new legislation that will soon be introduced in South Carolina, the new legislation that was introduced in Ohio, the legislative dynamics that are happening across the board, and those vans that were trolling that precious leader at Johns Hopkins University, just as they trolled the individual who led Harvard University a short couple weeks ago. We are talking about a coordinated and structured effort that is highly cohesive. And as an individual who cut his teeth as a scholar of strategy and change management and leadership, it is powerful to behold. But it is antithetical to the notions of Dr. King's beloved community. We identified in our research 519 pieces of anti-DEI legislation introduced at the state level. They fall into the area of anti-strategic DEI leadership, no DEI plans, no officers, no commitments to the type of work that is becoming more and more a part of the lifeblood of the University of Vermont. No DEI curriculum and training efforts that can happen at the K through 12 level and at all levels in terms of education, leadership development. The anti-LGBTQ community legislations, which are taking aim at all types of things focused into gender identity in particular. I will go a bit deeper here in 1 second. And anti-reproductive health, creating possibilities where individuals will have to move from different parts of the country into different parts of the country for women to be able to make precious decisions about their lives and their possibilities of their health. This is where we find ourselves, friend, because winter is here. And when I think about this from a purely LGBTQ perspective, data reported by CNN, look at this data if you can see it. If you cannot, I will call it out. What we talked about is that there were 42 pieces of anti-LGBTQ legislation introduced in 2018, 42. In 2023, CNN reported more than 417 pieces of anti-DEI legislation taking arm at the LGBTQ community, in particular around gender identity. And that's happening, friends, because the gender identity movement, the LGBTQ movement that we see happening in particular amongst our youngest generation is one of the most powerful and intersectional forces that is reshaping the very foundation of what our nation will look like as we now move forward. Across the country, our team has heat mapped various different spaces where this legislation is happening. Look at this map. The red means it's the most powerful and intrusive threats in terms of legislation that exist. The green means it's generally healthy and no threats exist. And you can see that the majority of our country right now is facing this incredible onslaught against Dr. King's work in the beloved community. I'm asked the question all the time, in particular as I've had a chance to move in some of these green spaces like Vermont, what should we be doing? We should be elevating this conversation in our communities, number one, but we should be using our voice to create pressurized dynamics with our national associations and national organizations to get them to begin to take on these mantles, to take on this challenge. And I'll come back to this in 1 second. Because we need a common strategic framework of action. It's not just the individual work of allies, we need strategic energy. We need the higher education, the K through 12, the policy, social justice foundations, corporate healthcare, and educational communities to come together. Because as I said before, there is a multi-million-dollar, approaching billion-dollar anti-DEI complex pushing against this on the other side, and no countervailing national strategy trying to champion the work of Dr. King, trying to champion the work moving forward towards a beloved community. We need a media strategy, a legislative strategy, a judicial strategy, an electoral strategy, a community engagement strategy, a youth strategy, a multi-million-dollar investment, and a multi-decade-long strategic focus that can stand in the breach nationally, strategically, at an overarching level just as staunchly as what we're seeing leading to those 519 pieces of anti-DEI legislation. People ask me, Dr. Williams, why does the policy look the same in this state and that state and this state and that state? It's because there's a well-funded multi-million-dollar organization that wrote a policy guidance brief and sent it to all the states. They cut and pasted the strategy, friends. And yet and still, none of our organizations have marshaled any countervailing energy in this regard. It hurts my heart. It hurts my heart because I believe deeply in the possibility of Dr. King's work. And I have a small team who I know are listening to me right now. And that small team that rallies with us every moment to do the work that matters most, I want to let you know I appreciate you. I appreciate your struggle. I appreciate your belief in the possibilities of the work that I've been helping to chart for so very long. I want to let you know I appreciate University of Vermont for giving me the gift of being here with you today, for helping to share some of these ideas here today. The ultimate measure of a person is not where they stand in moments of comfort and convenience, but where they stand in times of challenge and controversy. Where do you stand? The time is always right to do what's right. What have you done today? Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. My voice rang out today. Where is yours? Forgiveness is not an occasional act. It's a constant attitude. Forgiveness is something that has to be deep within us if we believe in a beloved community. We got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop, I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to a promised land. That the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. That darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. I invite all of you who are here, anyone within the sound of my voice, to join with me in a national event, a national training institute that my team is hosting around leading on unsettled ground and how we respond to these dynamics, and we're hosting it in March. It's going to be a half-day virtual event. We will engage around anti-DEI legislation. We will engage around de-escalating October 7th, Israel-Hamas tensions, which are gripping us so powerfully. Anyone who has interest, you can scan that QR code and find out more. There will be lots of information flowing around very soon. Those are my remarks. This is my time.
Dr. Damon A. Williams, he will be answering some questions for you all. You had 3 weeks? This brother had 3 weeks to share this with us today, and we are very fortunate. As I mentioned, we were in a trying time, and I knew there was nobody better for us, so I thank you, my brother, for stepping in such limited time. And I promise you, we will make these opportunities available to our university community, and we will follow up with our community on these opportunities. So we have some microphones. Dr. Sherwood Smith will have some microphones, and then I'm not sure who else will have some to go around for Sandy Bermazan. And by the way, Sandy Bermazan is our lead organizer. Thank you, Sandy Bermazan, for all your work. Thank you to the entire Office of the Vice Provost for DEI team and the Division of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. Okay, so we'll have folks who have a question. They'll try to come to you. I think there's somebody on the other side. All right.
I love questions, so please don't be bashful. Let's have a conversation.
Hello there, Dr. Williams. My question relates to conversations about the subject of DEI,
Yes.
racism, and things like that, particularly in a place like Vermont, where people will often prioritize courtesy or their perceived vision of courtesy over the hard conversations. And one thing I notice is that,
So y'all have a concept of Vermont nice here?
right, yeah, yeah, it's very subtle, right? What I notice is that there is always a trend to label the conversation politics when I keep saying it's about human rights, not politics, and the two are not the same.
Yeah,
And it's at that point where I lose people.
yeah.
And when you hear that, I'd like to hear what you do in that situation, or whatever corollary you'd like to use to that.
Yeah, it's a great question. First off, I want to thank you for that question. And, you know, having conversation and dialogue around these themes, these ideas of community, beloved community, whether we want to call it politics, whatever we want to call it, all the conversations can't manifest themselves the same way in each instance, right? So the conversation that we might have around our dinner table with family and close friends may have a particular tenor. The conversation that we may have in an intergroup dialogue program, which is a structured program where people are coming together and there's a pedagogy or a methodology of how we want to have that conversation, might look different. The conversation that we might have in a team with colleagues that we're working with, collaborating with, may look different. What I found is that in each of those conversations, I think it's incredibly important for us to, number one, try to always create environments where people feel safe to be able to have conversation, right? I also believe that conversations have to be, they can't start off on 10. They got to start off on 1. And then we got to take them to 2. Then we got to take them to 4. Then we might have to hold at 5 for a while, right? So one of the things we know about the possibilities of dialogue is, number one, dialogue only works when individuals are open to oppositional viewpoints, right? Let me say that again. Open to oppositional viewpoints. Being open to an oppositional viewpoint means 3 things. 1, you're willing to hear, listen, and learn. 2, you're willing to think about and consider what is being heard. And 3, you're open to the possibility of evolving your way of thinking to perhaps change, or to say, no, I'm good where I am, right? So being open does not mean that you will change. It means you're open to the possibility of that journey. One of the things that I found is that in the academy, universities, we have an incredible ability to create the conditions in which we can have certain types of conversations and dialogues and move people down a pathway. In our general work, moving in life and in society, those same parameters don't exist. And oftentimes people are mired in their perspective, rooted in their point of view, and there's an oppositionalness and a lack of openness, and also too a deep fear. One of the things that we learned as I had a chance to do DEI education at unprecedented levels of scale during that spiking moment where everyone was rushing forward was that when we would do anonymous polling, which is one of the most important tactics you can use, particularly early when you're trying to bring people together using anonymous technology so people can put their voice out there and what they really think out there and not be beholden to Vermont nice. Right? Not be beholden to a fear of saying what they really feel. The most frequent thing we oftentimes heard in those moments is, I'm afraid to say something because I don't know what to say or how to say it. And what I found is that when you allow for that to manifest, you have to continue to build from that moment, build from that moment, build for that moment. The final thing I'll offer is this. People ask me, Dr. Williams, why don't you do more, and why aren't you on TV or CNN or Fox or C-SPAN or whatever? And it's because I have no time for soundbite communication. Because it's not really about dialogue and engagement. People ask me, why don't you spend more time on social media? You could be a lot more bigger and influential in what you're doing, because social media is a space for soundbite and hard takes, not nuance and engagement. And I find those things to be antithetical to the notion of the beloved community. And for me, it's important to stay rooted in what really, really matters, because at the core, I'm an educator, and I believe deeply in the process of democracy. I believe deeply in the process of free speech. I believe deeply in the process of having difficult conversations. Thank you for your question. Thank you so very much. Yes, right here in the front. Unless there was something else, yes. They're recording, or they're online rather.
Is there any way you see that we can bridge these concepts that you have just described to our foreign policy? Because I see our foreign policy, anytime there's a conflict in the world, the first thing we do is either slap sanctions, or we send war material, or we bomb. In the last 2 weeks, we've bombed 3 different nations. Is there any way we can bridge that gap? And when you talk about, we are so rooted in our own ideas and our own policy that we can't see other views. To me, this is really happening in our foreign policy. And is there any way we could bridge that gap?
Yeah.
That's my question.
Wow. Well, just throw me a lob ball, why don't you? One of the things I've found, and I mean this very seriously, when you have big meta questions like that, and that's a huge question, I want to thank you for that, and it's a question of infinite complexity. What I found is I can't credibly give you anything in a soundbite that's going to really speak to that. So what I found is what's important is, can I take the question that's like this, and can I try to tighten it down in a way that I may be able to offer something that is a possibility of a meaningful answer. I am a huge believer in the power that we have as educational institutions to create learning experiences that cultivate the next generation of leadership who's able to look at issues in different types of ways, who's able to come to different types of decision points on different types of challenges and issues, who maybe leads with a humanistic orientation in the world. It's one of the reasons I wanted to become an educator. So for me, one of the possibilities, and it's one of the reasons why I think that taking this conversation and bringing it into the classroom experience, bringing it into the types of learning requirements that are needed to get a degree from a great place like University of Vermont, taking it into conversations of leadership in a particular type of way, I think is a place where we in the academy have incredible possibilities. I also think that there's a part of the nature of where we're going that candidly, I will always remain hopeful, but I'm not optimistic. And I just want to say that with a tremendous amount of humility and authenticity to your incredibly complex and difficult question. Thank you. We got one there, and I know one in the back.
Hi, thank you so much for being here, Dr. Williams. I have a question for you as someone who is also very passionate about anti-racism and DEI legislation. That passion for me sometimes turns into a lot of anger. I hold a lot of anger when it comes to anti-DEI legislation, or on a legislative note, not recognizing people's identities or seeing them as others, seeing them as less than. I just was wondering, how can you cultivate that kind of forgiveness and love as a way to overpower that anger that I hold with me, or that a lot of us hold?
I'm not certain of your gender pronouns. What are your gender pronouns, friend?
She, her. My name's Emily.
I'm gonna call you sister then. Sister, I really appreciate so much that question. And the reason I appreciate it so much is because your struggle is the struggle, I believe, of many DEI champions who feel so impassioned around these issues, oftentimes that are centric to their identity, right? Their identity perhaps as someone who's gender nonconforming, their identity as someone who is a person of color, their identity as a woman. And when we are faced with identity-centric dynamics that are so oppositional to our viewpoint, it is emotional. It is triggering. It is painful. I'll never forget when I was much earlier in my career, I was in a space where I was raging constantly around these issues. And one of my mentors, who is he is still an emeriti faculty at the University of Connecticut, Dr. Ronald Taylor, legendary sociologist, wrote the first book on black males, the first book on black family, legendary sociologist. And he was my boss as the senior vice provost for multicultural international affairs. I was assistant vice provost at 28 years old. I was still incredibly young and still grappling with these issues mightily. And I'll never forget what he told me. He said, Damon, you have to find a way to engage at a high level around these things, but you have to find a way also too that everything can't be personal. Find a way to make this a part of your work, but it's not so centric in you, because he said if you don't, it's going to burn you up from the inside out. The other part of it is, for me, a continuing belief and expansion, for me, in a faith-driven orientation of a beloved community. That even if you rampantly disagree with me, even if you throw vitriol and hate towards me, I try to walk consistently with Dr. King's message, I will pray for you, even though I stand staunchly and strongly and proudly and honorifically in resistance to you. And that is incredibly difficult. The final thought I will offer to that incredible question is stay rooted in self-reflection. Stay rooted in community and talking and growing. Find role models that are manifesting the way you want to move in the world, and try to reverse understand how they are, how they do, and make those parts of the qualities of how you are and how you do. These are the lessons and the tools that I've built for myself. If I had not, candidly, I believe I would have been gone a long time ago, because I was burning and raging so hard, where now I think my fire is one which is also deeply bound within a compassionate and a beloved notion of love for others. Yes.
Thank you. I have 1,000 thoughts, but I'll keep it concise. So a part of your previous response sort of answers my question, but I find that one, DEI, Jedi, belonging, all of that is a passion of mine, but I find that I tend to be neutral, right? I tend to stay somewhere in the middle ground, meaning I can see the perspectives on both ends, right? Because I have that open mind. But what I'm finding is that, and I appreciate you mentioning silent activism in your presentation, I find that those who do have that fire and who are moved by a sense of vitriol or rage, wanting to see change in a matter of minutes, which we know is unrealistic, they also find that that silent activism is not of benefit, or it doesn't help, right? Because it somehow equates to inaction. I kind of wonder what your opinion is on that. And do you find that, again, from a place of neutrality, are both necessary to move the needle forward? Or, I mean, at least in my personal experience, they seem to counteract one another. They seem to push each other out of the space and sort of invalidate one another based on just the lack of emotional intelligence. Wondering what your opinion is there.
Again, a wonderful question, a very layered question, a very complex question. One thing I would say to start with is I'm never value neutral, and I'm never neutral where I am. What I am is rooted in an understanding and a sophistication that people are in different places, right? So I'm always entering the discussion knowing what my values are and open to evolving them, because I try to be open to these things and try to be humble in that way, but knowing what my values are, and I enter in that space. But I also, over time, have learned that sometimes my voice is not going, in a conversation that's a particular content, is not going to manifest itself in a positive and developmental and moving outcome. I'm just in there performatively, excuse my French, talking shit. I don't do that. I say what I mean what I say, and I try to move in ways that sometimes silence is the approach, listening is the approach, questions are the approach. See, one of the things that we don't understand enough of is the power of questions. See, we want to enter with speaking instead of entering with a sense of unknowing and a sense of humility and a sense of growth and possibility. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to read you. I'm going to speak truth to power. Those are tactics that we need in a toolkit, but you also need other tactics. Can you say more? I'd love to understand more about your perspective. I'm not quite getting it. Can you give me an example? See, because one of the things that we miss is that questions are the connectivity that bring people closer together. Statements are the buffer that oftentimes amplify distance. Individuals who are powerful in their ability to bridge oppositional viewpoint have all these tools in the toolkit, and they use them in sophisticated types of ways. University of Vermont, Burlington community, we are into the evening. You have been so fantastic. Members of leadership, thank you all. Thank you for the gift and the honor to be with you today. Thank you so much.
Can we give it up one more time for Dr. Damon A. Williams? So thankful, so timely. And we will stay vigilant here at University of Vermont, and we will enact the plans that we are working on throughout this university. We will live into our common ground values, and we will continue to be a model for others who are struggling in various areas of our country and right here at home. We're going to end our program with one more song by Felicia Moore and Dexter Chris. They will be singing Together We Can Move Mountains.
What a powerful experience we have had here with you, Dr. Damon A. Williams. Thank you. This last song is a favorite request of Sandy, and I feel it appropriate as we continue on this climb toward a beloved community. Together we can move mountains. Alone we can't move at all. Together we can move mountains, but alone we can't move at all. Now, people, sometimes we despair when we think we're alone and nothing's gonna change. We get stepped on, abused, talked about and confused, made to suffer and told we're to blame, but together we can move mountains. Alone we can't move at all. Together we can move mountains. Alone, we can't move at all. Now the ones who get rich while we scrape to get by, they know our unity means their defeat. So they set us against one another, sister and brother, color against color, keeping us weak. They're trying to keep us weak, but together we can move mountains. Alone we can't move at all. I said together we can move mountains. Alone we can't move at all. Now, the smallest seed, a giant tree can grow with its roots planted firmly in the ground. But we've gotta look up to the sun. Only then will we know all the love and beauty and life to be found, because together we can move mountains. Alone we can't move at all. I said together we can move mountains. Alone we can't move at all. We're gonna turn this into a choir. Sing with me. Together we can move mountains. Stay right there. Let me hear it together. Together we can move mountains. Together, together we can move mountains. Alone, alone we can't move at all. Alone we can't move at all. Oh, alone we can't move. We can't move at all. Alone we can't move. We can't move at all. Alone we can't move at all. Alone we can't move at all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Felixa and Dexter. Thank you all, including the over 130 people that joined us online. Let's do the work of advancing Dr. King's legacy. Thank you very much.